Let me start this. All right, we are recording. All right, hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jeff Emsweiler from the Greensburg, Decatur County Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to this Zoom meeting today. This is like my fifth or sixth one to run, so I'm still learning how to run it. So we're happy that you're here today, and we'll make this, we are recording. We hope you keep your microphones muted. Unless you have a question, we have the chat room open. And you can use the chat room to ask questions as we're going along. My assistant, Dawn Lowe, is, wave Dawn, that's her. She's a rock star. She's been working her tail off. I know that for a fact. Doing a great job with our social media marketing through all this. And it's been a very, very hectic 3 weeks, maybe a month. I've kind of even lost track of what day it is. I'm sure many of you have as well. So we're going to be recording this, and Dawn will help us monitor the chat room. I want to welcome Trish Miller from Batesville Area Chamber of Commerce. Trish, are you on here yet? Is that her down there in Chamber Admin? I'm not sure. So also, Deborah Tompkins. Deborah, wave, how are you?
Hi.
She's the Executive Director of Ripley County Chamber of Commerce. And of course, our featured speaker today is Ginnie Faller, the SBDC advisor here in our region. She covers our counties in the, I don't know, 5 or 6 counties here in Southeast Indiana. And she's, I think you're in Lawrenceburg, aren't you today there?
Yes.
Right, yeah. She's working out of the Lawrenceburg office. And I'm telling you what, folks, if you have not used the Ginnie Faller for any of your business dealings, whether she's checked over your business plans or anything like that, she's a rock star. She is our go-to person. She helps us out tremendously here in Greensburg, Decatur County. I'm sure that the other directors will also admit that as well, including Eric Krantz from Dearborn County, who's on the call with us today too. Hi, Eric, how you doing? And we're going to turn it over, get started right away. This is a very important topic today. Of course, all topics are important as we look to reopen our communities and wait on those words to come down from our local officials and our government officials that says, let's get going, let's get started again. But a lot of businesses are hurting, a lot of businesses are anxious, and we've just got to get this economy generated again. But Ginny's going to talk to us about getting through this and moving forward. So we'll turn it over to Ginnie Faller. She has control.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you for supporting this and giving me a platform to be able to have these talks. And thank you to all the chambers for getting the information out so that we can all get together and talk about this as one. I think that's a really big and exciting thing that's going on in my whole region. So again, my name is Ginnie Faller, and I work for the Indiana Small Business Development Center. As for any of you who don't know, I give no charge business advice. Anybody who wants to start a business, expand a business, or commercialize a product. And I cover 6 counties: Franklin, Dearborn, Ripley, Ohio, Switzerland, Decatur. So again, it's very exciting for me to have all these counties together and really helpful, because then it's one time and I get to as many people as possible. One other thing I want to say is that Jeff was awesome, and he sponsored another talk earlier this week that he said he recorded and archived, and something for you to go out and look at. It's on marketing planning. It's a really down and dirty, easy way for you to think about marketing planning, and that will be one of your steps to coming out of this also, is marketing planning. I'll refer to that too. So in order to get started, I need to share my screen. And so forgive me here for a minute. I'm going to go out and get my screen so that I can share it and we can go through the talk. Okay, so today what I'm going to talk about is a 12-step plan for keeping the lights on, especially as it relates to the coronavirus. Although this really, I mean, it highlights some new things that are available for small businesses, but it also gives us an opportunity to talk about some things that should have been going on in businesses all along that probably haven't. You know, some of the things that been planning for all along, but we probably either put to the back burner, weren't aware that we should be doing it even, or that just really didn't come up. We hadn't used it in a long time. But because of the weather and how things happen, how emergencies have been coming up, it's a good thing to think through some of these ideas also. So I'm just going to go through step by step what at least I would be doing and what I would be recommending.
Is she frozen or am I frozen?
I'm going to say it.
Who's frozen?
Am I frozen?
I'm not sure who's frozen. Well, okay, you're back now, I think. Are we
Yeah,
okay now, folks?
Ginny was frozen for a second.
Okay.
It does say my internet connection is unstable.
That's why I came in the office today. Mine's been unstable at home, so
Yeah, I think it's, I think it could be the weather, but
it could be.
so we're going to try and work through this, okay? Worst
Yep.
case scenario, I will give you this presentation when it's done and you can post it wherever you want.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So step one, cut costs and reach out. All right. So you need to be analyzing those things today that you really don't need to spend your money on to keep the lights on. All right. These are the down and dirty things. What can I do to mitigate my expenses? And then you need to reach out to all of your creditors. First thing you need to look at is bank debt. What debt payments are going to be due and what fees can be waived? Reach out to your banks. They are offering deferments on your debt and ask them, even if they're not ready to offer a deferment, ask them at least if they'll give you an interest-only payment, at least for the next few months. That's the first thing. The next thing that goes hand in hand with that is credit card debt. So reach out to your credit card company, ask them if you can get deferred payments with them and maybe no interest for a few months. Negotiate with them. Ask them, what can I do? How can I push out those payments and how can I mitigate some of those fees, especially if it's late fees? Then reach out to your landlord and mortgage company or mortgage companies. Look, I have talked to so many people and they haven't even talked to their landlord yet. They're freaking out about how to pay their rent, but they haven't talked to their landlord about maybe deferring the payments or reducing their rent through this bad time, especially if you've had to close your doors. Next is utility payments. Most of the utility companies that I have heard of and have talked to have said that they have deferred payment plans and are willing to delay their payments, especially if you've closed your doors for now. And lastly, insurance companies. Also, every insurance company that I've talked to has a delayed payment plan and is willing to offer, if you're on monthly payments especially, offer other payments like quarterly or biannually or annual payments once you get up and going. They're really willing to help out. Now, I have heard of some landlords who haven't been willing at all, but it's worth the ask. All right, step two. Look at your cash flow, right? Map out your cash flow over the next 6 months. Look at your accounts receivable. What should you be having coming in? How long can you make it through a time when you're paying sick leave and maybe you have employee absenteeism and then your revenue is not as strong as it was? And what do you need to bridge that gap? Here are some steps in that. Get a credit line approved right now. Go to the bank. Even if you don't use it, you've probably already pulled together all the documentation. You need to get the line approved. Know how much that you can go up to in case you might need it. Aggressively pursue your accounts receivable. Now, I say this a little bit within reason, considering that you're going to ask for extensions also. Be ready to negotiate payments. But those people who possibly were going to put on bad debt or who haven't paid from last year, you need to be asking for those payments. Negotiate some payment reductions and extensions on things like the USDA's business and industry loans. By the way, those can be deferred for 180 days. That's 6 months. Request deferments on payments for your revolving loan fund notes. Nobody's going to want to hear that. But the truth is, better that than you go out of business and not be able to pay those at all. Also, be aware that the federal income tax deadline has been extended to July 15th. One caveat to that is that your payroll and excise taxes still have to be paid. And lastly, do the math. Do the math of how much money it's costing you to stay open versus closing your doors, especially when you have no revenue. Is it better for you to stay open? Or is it better for you to close for a short period of time? Which costs you less? Look at your financials and see how your cash flow is going to go. especially if you're a seasonal business. Okay, step 3, understand your insurance. What does your insurance policy say? A lot of business insurance has something called business interruption insurance. All this insurance coverage is that it replaces business income lost in a disaster. I've seen other small business policies and it exists. It's not sold as a separate policy, but it could be added on to your property or casualty policy, or it's included in a comprehensive package as an add-on. And I've seen a lot of small businesses have it. You may not even know it, so review your business insurance policy. And if you have it, contact your insurance agent right away. Make a claim. This is the time. Now, if you haven't had any interruption relative to your revenue stream because of COVID-19 or any of these other problems, then don't do it. Don't claim it. But if you have, go and take advantage of it. All right. Step 4, prepare for the disaster loan. There are 2 different loans, actually there's 3, but the 2 main ones within the CARES Act are the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the Paycheck Protection Program. Now I've spent a lot of time talking about these with people. One thing you should know, that the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, otherwise known as the EIDL, or to the SBA, it's known as the EIDL loan, is administered through the SBA, so you have to apply for it from the SBA, and the emergency portion is calculated at $1,000 per employee. That's that portion that is forgivable or as a grant. You'll need to complete and assemble your 2019 prior year financial statements, and you'll need to start documenting and forecasting the impacts of the situation. Now, I have to say, and this is unfortunate, that I haven't heard of a lot of people who have actually gotten this so far. They've given out 385 loans in the state of Indiana. I only have 1 client who has received one so far. And there are some things, depending on how much money you want, there are collateralization issues. So, so be aware that this is a loan, but the loan payments are deferred for a full year. Then there's the Paycheck Protection Program. I think this program has been better because it's administered through the banks. And by better, I mean it's been more available. I've seen a lot more people who have been able to get it. There are 2 different avenues of this, or 2 different ways to look at this. The full amount of what you can actually get is calculated using your 2019 full payroll. But the forgivable portion is the portion that you're going to spend on payroll and a few qualifying expenses in that time of 8 weeks after the date of the loan. That's the forgivable portion. So you need to be aware that if you don't want the loan part, or you don't want it to become a loan, that you need to spend it in that 8 weeks time. The caveat is that you have to spend 75% of the PPP for payroll, and only 25% of it can be spent on rent, utilities, and mortgage interest payments. But it's calculated based on payroll. Now, you can only get both of these one time. All right, step 5, important one. Evaluate your ability to retain your employees. What is your ability to retain them? You're probably going to have a ramp-up period after we come out of the shutdown. Which employees do you really need to have back, and you really need to keep them? And which ones are you going to need later, or that at this point you would need to let go? If you need to lay off, furlough, or terminate any staff, please consult an employment attorney, because the labor laws were not designated for this situation and some things might have changed. But if you have to lay off some employees, they are eligible for increased unemployment benefits. Keep in mind, though, that that could come back and bite you a little bit, because the current maximum is an additional $600 per week above and beyond the maximum of unemployment, which is, I think it's $365 or $85, something like that, a week. And that's extended to 4 months. So that could mean that there are some employees who are making more money than what they were working for you. That could make you have some unforeseen circumstances. Think through how you would want to handle that if an employee says they don't want to come back. Also, there is a recovery rebate, which I think everyone knew. It's $2,400 per married couple plus $500 per dependent other under 17 years of age. I want to tell you, anybody out there who has a college student, just as an aside, between the ages of 17 and 24, and you've claimed them, they get no rebate at this point. And by the way, I have one.
Ginny, can I ask a question about that real quick? Because I thought even if you, and I think it's with the single, if you're not married, it's $1,200. But I thought if you had a college student and claimed it as a dependent, you would get an additional $500. That's not the case?
I don't think that's the case.
I know it's not the case.
Yeah, because all the documentation, I went out, believe me, I went out and searched, and they were wrangling in the legislature to put that back on at $500. But at the last point where I looked at it, they had not done that. And I haven't heard nothing in the popular press that they've said that either. So believe me, my daughter is just as upset as
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
your son. Yes. Okay. So that's step 5 about employees. Step 6, leverage the tax changes. And there have been some. Now, it could be that you need to talk to your accountant because these are going to be leveraged at the end of the year, but you need to be documenting for them today. There is a deferral of the employer side FICA payroll taxes, or in other words, Social Security taxes. You can defer the employer portion of the FICA taxes through the end of 2020. All those deferments, though, will be due in 2 equal installments, one at the end of 2021 and the other one at the end of 2022. So half of that deferment isn't going to be due until the end 2 years from now. There's also a retention tax credit. We don't know all the details of this, but it will be a tax credit for employers to encourage businesses to keep workers on their payroll, especially during this crisis. Something you want to take advantage of, especially if you kept employees and you had the PPP. You'll want to talk to your accountant about that at the end. Also, your filing due dates, which we've already discussed, are pushed back.
Ginny, we have a quick question. If you want to answer it now, or do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, if it's relative to tax, I have to put my disclaimer. I'm not an accountant and I can't give tons of tax advice.
The chamber's not an attorney. I'm putting my disclaimer out there, okay?
Okay.
And neither is Batesville and Ripley County. We're not attorneys. The question is, I would like to better understand the liability to a nonprofit if their employees file unemployment. Can you please expand on this? Liability to a nonprofit if their employees file unemployment.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know a lot about nonprofits. I'll be honest. I know a little bit about nonprofits relative to the new CARES Act, but it's not something that I've been traditionally charged with taking care of. So I don't know all the rules for that. So I probably can't give any good advice on it. I'm sorry. I wish I could. I don't know the liabilities relative to employees filing. And I'm assuming they're asking if their insurance claim will go up or their insurance payment will go up. I'm assuming they're asking that, but I don't know for sure. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. We'll continue on. Let's see. Any direction on who we should ask for that is the next question. Who can Amber go to find more information out about that? If you don't pay in, you can't claim unemployment, right?
Right. If you don't pay in. So we're going to talk about some other unemployment or some sick leave things that may answer that. I'm going to have to think about that.
Okay, let's go on.
And I might have to reach out on that too, because I don't really know tons of answers. Here's one person that I would say is probably will know the answer to that, and that is your work one professional. And Eric can attest to this. We're on a call every week, and the work one professional in our area is on that call, and he's pretty good about answering those questions. So yes, that's probably the person that I would go to.
And we can get information, phone numbers and stuff. We'll work one. That Kirk Coon's been great down there. Julie Hines
Yes.
here in Greensburg, Decatur County. They've been terrific with us. So,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
All right. Okay, so the step 7, we've talked about a lot of things, right? We've talked about employees. We've talked about some basic things that we want to put in place that are to mitigate the situation. We've talked about maybe some tax benefits relative to that, money and finances. Now let's talk about something that's a little bit different, and that is communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate is step 7. And by that I mean communicate with your employees and your customers. Err on the side of over communication in this case. Also, use this as an opportunity. Let's start to change our mindset a little bit from, oh my goodness, I'm a victim and I'm in this horrible situation, which we are. But let's change our mindset and get past the panic and think about how can I make opportunities in this as I go forward. One of them, a big one, is in the way of communication. How you communicate with your customers and employees. Also, it's developing plans moving forward. This gives you an opportunity to develop those plans. It doesn't feel like an opportunity, but it is. It is. Everything that has happened in my life, anyway, that has turned my life around has been because I changed the way I thought. And this is one of them. Share as much information as you can with your employees. And that is within reason, of course, but share information with them about what's going on, what you're going to do, what your plans are. Keep them informed so they know they're going to have a lot of questions and they're going to be very scared. And because they're going to feel insecure. So communicate with them about their jobs and maybe give them options. The second thing, we talked about this right off, create a marketing plan based on this new economic environment. Make that plan useful. Make it use different communication methods. Those might be developed by keeping your customers informed, right? Tell them about the steps that you're taking to ensure that you have a safe and clean establishment. Tell them about your open hours and how to communicate with you, right? Here's a tip. Use email auto reply to answer those frequently asked questions. Also, offer alternative methods for good delivery, right? If you don't need to see them face to face, we can just drop something off and they can pick it up, or if you have curbside delivery, whatever that is, be creative about your alternative method. Then start to think about online platforms to inform customers. Now, I know a lot of people in my region don't want to hear that because they don't want to deal with online platforms because they think it's hard. Well, the user interfaces for a lot of these platforms have become a lot easier. All right, at least start with a direct email. And if you don't have your customers' email addresses, start collecting them. This is the perfect opportunity for you to start. Try Twitter. That's just tweeting out. Look, the 70-some-year-old president tweets out every day, more than once. If he can do it, we can do it. Also, business profiles on Google are another opportunity for you to stay connected with your customers. It's an easy way. They offer easy website help and lots of tutorials. You may have the time to be actually able to look at those tutorials. Believe me, right, Jeff? You and I have used a lot of new things in the last few weeks. And if we're in that generation that if we can do it, anybody can do it.
Absolutely.
Last thing, this is not online, but worst case scenario, use postal delivery. It's more expensive, but at least you'll be communicating. Depends on your business. Okay, step 8, look at your supply chain, right? Workplace absenteeism is affecting everyone across the globe. And your supply chain's financials will be impacted as well as delivery ability will be impacted. You've already seen that, right? Look at who your suppliers are. If you have a lot of sole source suppliers or just one, even just one source for your products, consider diversification. It's important that you have multiple providers so that when you get into situations like this, and even in everyday situations, right, that you have a resource so that your business can use that can help you get out of a sticky situation. It also may open up all new products and services that you never realized existed. Consider partnering with other businesses that maybe have a similar thing or even competitors to share a vendor contract. This will increase your order sizes and the priority that you are in that vendor. It also might help you reduce your cost of goods sold. Now, those are a little harder to do, right? It's a little harder to look at. But at this point, it's worth doing it. And in the future, this will only benefit you. Wherever you put the effort is where you're going to see the benefit. Excuse me. So you're going to see benefit from doing all of these things. All right, step 9. This is the thing that I was referring to before that you probably didn't have, or you might not have thought a lot about. Develop an incident response plan. Now, it's fresh in your mind right now about what you can do, right? Or what has happened to you. But easily any other things other than something like the novel coronavirus could impact your business in an emergency type way. By the way, out there as you go west, tornadoes are a big deal. And they've been a big deal all across the South, even today as we speak. So that is a disaster that you need to have a plan for. Also, hail damage or any other thing that might impact workflow. What did you have in place, or what do you have in place for external emergencies? Here's one thing to consider. Can your employees work from home to continue your revenue stream? Can you sell online or deliver instead of staffing your brick and mortar? Also, what kind of technologies can you implement now, especially new ones, to reach your customers? And what communication avenues do you have in place in order to talk to them, as well as your employees? This is an emergency disaster plan that I always encourage people to have. How are you going to communicate? Heaven forbid something should happen, but how are you going to talk to people when it does? You're a business person and you are important in this community, in any community. You are a leader. Having this written down and documented just allows you to get through the panic stage of an emergency or disaster, especially like this. It helps you to think through, what was my plan? Work on things. It helps your mindset. It helps the way that your emotions are and feel. And it keeps you focused on doing things to move forward rather than getting stuck in the panic. Identify your essential functions and cross-train your employees. This should always be going on, but I know that it doesn't. I know that it doesn't because I talk to a lot of you all the time. That is, what are your SOPs? Standard operating procedures for your basic and biggest core functions. Document those things. Not only will it help you in an emergency, but it will also help you to train new employees. Consider what programs and services could be temporarily shut down if there was an emergency, and which things you absolutely don't want to shut down. Think about your potential disruptions in supplies and services and the transportation of those same things. Think about employee absenteeisms. Identify alternative vendors and suppliers that you can access from any device. Who are they that allow you to make purchases right online that you can access from your phone? All right, and store your information for your employees, vendors, and clients in an online account that is also accessible from any device. That's something to consider. If you're not going to do that, have it in a place that is secure that you can access it. Okay, that's step number 9. Also, continue with that, especially today, practice physical distancing, at least for now. Encourage good hygiene with your employees, purchase hand sanitizer, and encourage your employees to wash their hands with soap and water for 20 seconds at least. I always say the ABC song when I'm washing my hands now. I've sung the song how many thousands of times now as I'm washing my hands. In fact, I did it this morning. Establish a no handshaking policy, at least for now. And encourage employees to keep their environment clean. And if you have to bring back employees early and you don't know what to do with them, have them thoroughly clean the property. Have them use the sanitizers they have and clean your area. All right, now, if you have some employees who have been exposed to COVID-19, encourage well employees that have to take care of sick family members to go to the CDC guidance for help on how to do that. This is part of your communication program to your employees. Also, if you have confirmed COVID-19 sick employees, they should be notifying their employer. You may need to make your employees aware that if they are sick or if they have to stay home with sick family members or kids, that they need to inform you. I've heard so many employees that just stay home and they think they can get unemployment, but they have to talk to their employer. Sometimes we as a leader need to tell our employees that. Also, as the employer, you should notify the fellow employees of their possible exposure. Now, you have to maintain confidentiality on that, so you can't say names, but you need to tell them that they've been exposed. And the exposed employees, tell them that they should refer to the CDC guidelines on how to conduct a risk assessment of their potential exposure. That is dealing with the exposure. All right, that is step number 9. We talked about some things that you can do across the board for emergency planning, and then we talked about some very specific things. All right, step 10. It's important that you know this, and you may not know this already, but you need to reevaluate your sick leave policies. And here's why. Because there are other things out there as come down from the CARES Act that you should be aware of. But first, review your additional benefit options to help support your employees. All right? Your employees may be infectious or they need to stay at home to care for family members. As a result, what can you do in-house to help them move through this with the sick leave policies that you already have? An example might be borrowing sick leave from one year to put into another. Another one might be providing administrative leave somehow. Another approach might be to establish some special provisions for the coronavirus circumstances. All these things are up to you and they're part of your policy, so you can implement them. Here are the things that you really need to be aware of, that there are new paid sick leave requirements for businesses with less than or equal to 500 employees. These are now in place legally. You need to offer paid sick leave for 2 weeks at 100% of the employee's normal pay. Also, you need to offer paid family and medical leave for an additional 12 weeks, which is at 67% of their normal pay. That's up to $200 a day, and the other is up to $511 a day. Now, the small businesses who are doing this, they'll get a tax credit to cover these costs, but you have to offer that. They need to be confirmed coronavirus positive also. For gig workers and independent contractors, there is also the same benefit in the form of a tax credit.
Oh,
Now, yes,
sorry, let me interrupt. You said they have to be confirmed. So you are saying that if somebody calls in with a fever and they've got a fever, they have not been tested.
they need to get tested.
Okay.
Yeah, because in order to get the tax credit, they have to be confirmed. At this point, that's all I really know. And you'll have to probably have some confirmation of that, but you must provide this paid sick leave and the family medical leave for any of your payroll workers. You don't have to provide it for your independent contractors. Now, here is what they're telling us right now, and this is, I don't have any structure for this, but this is what is written and documented in the federal government's documentation. The federal government is going to pick up the cost of the paid leave by applying a credit in your Social Security taxes. If the credit is insufficient, the federal government will pay the business owner directly for the difference. Well, you or your workers don't have to be sick to qualify, but you have to prove that you were told to be in quarantine. All right. Anybody told to be in quarantine who is exposed to the virus, showing symptoms, or needs to get tested for preventative care qualifies. Now they need to get tested, and you need to have that documentation. The family leave is a little easier. It's up to 3 months of paid leave to adhere to the quarantine. That is to take care of a sick family member and or a child who is kept home from school because their school is closed. That is the documented wording for the federal government, what we have so far. Gig workers and independent contractors are much the same. That is, if you're paid by another company, you're eligible for a tax credit for 2 weeks of sick leave at your average pay and 12 weeks of family medical leave at 2/3 of your average pay. The same caps apply at $511 for the sick leave and $200 a day for the family medical leave. Here's the kicker, right? You must show you had to comply with self-isolation or care for family members, including children whose schools were closed. So, as an employer, your employee needs to give you some kind of documentation for that. I'm telling you this up front before we have a lot of structure, because the tax credits are going to be administered later in the year. They'll be applied against your tax payments, and you'll get a rebate if your tax is lower than the credit. Now, just like when they rolled out the EIDL and the PPP, right? They don't have a lot of structure around this yet. So the best thing to do is to err on the side of documentation. Get all the documentation so that you have it and you're covered. Okay. People aren't going to want to hear this one either, but step 11 is to update your business plan. A lot of things have changed. You don't have to update the document as much really, but you do need to update your plan, your go-to-market strategy. You know, one thing to consider is, can your workers work from home? Can you offer flex working environments now? Is that something that you found out, oh, wow, it wasn't as scary or as bad as I thought? Create an employee communications plan. This should probably be in the employee handbook or some way that it's reviewed at least annually. Establish a process for sharing information and anticipate that your employees are going to have a lot of anxiety around the insecurity of this time. Here's a biggie. Determine how to handle spikes in absenteeism. That is hard on an everyday basis, especially for restaurant people, retail, a lot of service organizations, right? Absenteeism spikes a lot. Determine how you're going to handle that and put it into your employee handbook. Be prepared to change your business practices to maintain your critical operations. Determine what is your core competency in the thing that you're actually selling. How do you maintain that above all other things? And one tip, right? be cyber secure. As your operations move online, be really careful about your cyber security. All right. Last step, finally, last step. Support other businesses. You're all in this together. Other businesses depend on you. A lot of, independent contractors, as well as small suppliers, they depend on you. If you're planning a large event or a small event or any kind of gathering, try not to cancel it. Try to reschedule it. Examine your contract language for your ability to reschedule. We've been talking about this a lot for the tourism industry. Try to reschedule those later in the year. And by the way, if you watch the marketing planning video or you were in that Zoom meeting, you would have found out that you need to be thinking about what kind of events or what kind of opportunities are you going to give for your customers to interact with you. Okay, if you've already had those scheduled, reschedule them. Don't cancel them. There are a lot of people who depend on you doing well. And we all want to see you be a success. All right, I hope that was helpful. And
Go ahead.
I'm done. It sounds like we have a lot of questions.
Well, we have a question. I have one that came in and they seem to be on the unemployment side, but I want to talk about a few other things as well. But one question is, if a business receives an SBA loan, but the employee can make more money on unemployment for 4 months, what happens? Is the employer required to pay the unemployment amount to match?
No.
The employer's not.
No, they're not required. So keep in mind, if you get the PPP, the forgivable portion is to be spent in the 8 weeks following the loan date. But if you don't spend it then and you still need the money, it just transitions into a loan.
Okay. Our next question, and it was posted from the government website. It says you don't have to be diagnosed with the virus to get the 2 weeks of pay. If you were told by the government to stay home, that counts. So, well,
right, but you would need to provide documentation that you were told by the government to stay home.
Okay. So one thing I want to mention is that I know that as we look forward to however the state's going to reopen us and things like that, I'm not sure I haven't really figured out the entire complete authority of the local government versus the governor's authority. I know in Decatur County, our commissioners went red for a week, and then Governor Holcomb came out and said, no county will be red. There were 2 counties that were red. We were one of them. So now everybody has our situation we have, we're at the orange status level, which is essential travel only, but obviously they're trying to get things back up and running. They've opened up the restaurants to drive-through only. I believe from what I'm hearing and reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about cleaning your workstations and keeping your buildings clean, but the possibility of guidelines being how many people can be inside your building at a time, the fact of social distancing, having people at your station or whether they're coming up to pay or whatever, perhaps the plexiglass that will cover you and whoever's taking your cash, 6 feet distancing. And there is also, I believe, my anticipation, I don't know this for a fact, but, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or weigh in here, however, I expect they're going to want you to have some kind of temperature gauge, some kind of thermometer to take an electronic temperature reading of everybody that's coming in your store. Have you heard that, or do you know more about that by any chance?
So I have been waiting, like you, for what the rules are going to be for how we go back. And I haven't seen anything. Maybe someone else has in the chamber. I haven't seen anything yet on that. In fact, we were just talking yesterday within the ISBDC, our Southeast region, and no one had mentioned it at all. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised by any of those things. And my expectation, Jeff, based on some of the things that you said, I would agree with you about the temperature thing. That's happening right now. I think Tricia can attest to this. Hillrom is doing that right now for all their employees. And so I wouldn't be surprised. We've heard a lot in the popular press about how they can do that maybe from afar. And so I would guess that they're going to start working on some of those guidelines, especially the distance ones. Right now, a lot of retail, if you go in, you got to stand in line where you keep 6 feet between us. That's probably going to happen. So things worth considering, but I haven't seen any documentation on it. Maybe
Right, I
someone
know.
else could.
I know our local Walmart, and I'm speaking from Greensburg, Decatur County standpoint, and maybe Deborah and Pierce want to weigh in too. Our local Walmart has tightened up their rules and regulations. They're working very hard to keep it one person from a family coming in. They are making all of their employees wear masks now. They have somebody stationed out wiping down the carts. I know that their online ordering has tripled, if not quadrupled or whatever. I mean, they're blowing it out of the water. 2 days out from ordering and pickup. So I know they're doing their best that they can as well.
I would say our local Kroger is doing those same things as well. A lot of those same things, actually. And I wouldn't be surprised that those things continue. Yeah, and kind of maybe new rules on how to clean workstations and clean the environment. That's probably going to happen.
Right, that's going to be a little bit difficult for some of our smaller mom and pop shops. Some of our local businesses in our downtown areas are just 1 or 2, 3 employees. So for somebody to stand there and have to take somebody's temperature before they come in the door, I'm a little bit baffled by it. Not baffled, but I don't know how they get through that yet. So
well, just like remember, okay, maybe some of you don't remember this. I remember 9/11 and I remember I was traveling when all that happened. And all of those things that changed in the airlines, that's what I expect similar things to change for our businesses.
Right. So let's move on to something else here, Trish. And I'm sure all of our chambers of commerce and our local economic development groups, our tourism groups, we're going to do everything we can. I know that in Greensburg, Decatur County, we are working closely with our local organizations to get communication out there, keep communication out there. So as soon as we know things, we're going to push it out to people. But let's talk about, here's what's important. I have to say this for Chambers of Commerce. Chambers of Commerce are heavily driven by revenue from events. And one of the things that chambers are known for are bringing people together. So we have a question. What about rescheduling events? How are we going to know when it's safe? And of course, there are so many unknowns. And should we, you talked about events, not canceling them, but postponing. And I think right now we are in a situation where not only Chambers of Commerce, but also our United Fund, all of our local organizations have events, and they're planned out 4 months down the road. Well, eventually, folks, we're going to be all the events at the end of the year if we can have them. And I'm sure people are worried about whether or not we're going to be able to start back to school the way that, and nothing's come down yet. Are we going to be able to get our kids physically in school in August? I don't have that answer, and I don't know that they have that answer yet. So
I don't have that answer yet either. And I would say this, I mean, I've heard people canceling things in June, not as many after June, but I have heard up to June anyway. That said, canceling, rescheduling, think about how you would communicate one way or the other, right? If you rescheduled something like till October, maybe, and we get different communication on how we need to run it, how will we communicate that right away as soon as we get it, right, to people? I also think that we need to talk to our suppliers about that may happen. And when we're negotiating those contracts, we need to be completely transparent about, hey, this is all hinging upon what the government tells us we have to do. So be aware of it and talk openly with suppliers and people that you are making contracts with. Be careful about your contracts. That said, I think my biggest thing is, how can we work together? How can we use each other to be suppliers? How can we continue to be there for each other? And as small business people, I totally understand the situation that Chamber's in.
Well, we certainly don't have a magic crystal ball that we can look at.
No.
I'm not really sure that, and you mentioned it before, there's going to be some employees that don't want to go back to work, and they don't. They're scared, but I know our employers here in our county, they're taking those steps. They've readjusted their lines, or they put up the protective barriers. They've got the sanitizer. They are checking temperature and things when they're ready to come back on. They're preparing for that right now. But there are still going to be some employees that are going to try to skirt that issue. Oh, I'm scared to go in. Then they're going to sit there and say, well, that's an HR thing, right?
Yes, actually, as an employer, I hate to say it, it puts you in kind of a bad situation, but you have to make a decision. You know, that when we were talking about employees, I mentioned which employees you just have to have back, right? There are some employees which are critical to what you're doing, and you just really need to have them back. Determine who they are, right? And then be very clear with your employees. If they decide to if you call them back and they decide to stay home, I mean, essentially that's quitting. And if you quit, you don't necessarily get the unemployment benefit and you've lost your job. So it depends on how the employer wants to be, because the employer is the one who goes out on unemployment and confirms or denies that, yes, I laid that person off, right? And truth is, because it's the employer's risk, the financial risk, right, for unemployment. I get that they have better benefits, but I think there's more of a conversation that needs to be had.
Right.
And so you're right, Jeff, you're right. It's human resources.
So we don't know exactly how many businesses in our communities have received payroll protection or any kind of emergency funding, whatever. And some of them have told me, actually, Ginny, they've told me that, you know, they can't go much past farther than May 1. You know, they're going to start thinking about, are they going to sell off their inventory, take it to auction? Are they going to go out of business? I mean, some people are starting to get a little panicky and things. If it comes down to that, and they don't have a plan to exit their business, can you help out with that? Do you have the ability to help out with disbanding the business? And we don't really want to think about that, but that's got to be in the back of some people's mind.
I have the ability to talk through what their options are. So I can sit down with someone and say, hey, let's brainstorm what your options are. One of the things they need to do in advance of that is, what was that, step number 1, step number 2, look at your cash flow. Be able to look out and forecast what your cash flow is going to be. And then think about, can I get a line of credit? Now, there are a lot of people out there who are just really small business people, and it may not be worthwhile for them to do that. But then again, you know, you personally have to think about what your options are for, you know, how am I going to get income into my household? So this is all so not an easy conversation and not something I want to have with someone. But that said, it all is very dependent on the business, the type of business they have, how hard they've been hit by it, how good their financials were before they went into it, how strong they were going into it, and you know, what their desire is as a small business person. You know, do you want to continue or not? I'm hoping that you do, but that said, I can sit down with people and brainstorm about, okay, how do we move forward? At least put some structure to that thinking.
And if somebody has that type of business and they want to get out and they want to get back in, again, I'm going to encourage everybody to contact you, because you are absolutely the expert, in my opinion. I think you're terrific. So one more thing I want to bring up, and
I
feel
always
free
do
to.
these for you, Jeff, because you're always so positive and awesome.
Right, so I'm awesome. So anyway, one more thing I want to bring up, and folks, we're getting ready to wrap this up. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat room, and let's get those questions answered. And I'll let the other executive directors chime in if they want. One avenue, folks, if you take advantage of it, Chambers of Commerce have terrific, most all of us have terrific newsletters, great communication guides. I don't know what the standards are for the Ripley County and the Batesville Chambers are in pushing information out there, but I can tell you that Dawn Lowe, our assistant here, she is working very hard to keep not only members, but we know it's important that our community survives. So at this time, we've kind of opened up to non-members as well. We want to communicate what the plans are. So if you're on this, and you're not a member of our chamber, for a while, we're going to help you get that out. We want our counties and our communities to recover. And so, Deborah, I don't know, you probably have an email that you send out every week too. Is that right? Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, basically, when we get the information, we send it out to our members as well. And like you said, we're trying to do it to where it's the whole community and not just the members, because we want our whole community to be successful. So like you said, we kind of just relay the information to the members, to the community, have our newsletters and so forth. So.
Right. And Trish and Eric, I know you're from Dearborn County. You're on this call. If you want to chime in, you're more than welcome to as well. Or not, that's fine too. So
Tricia said that she sends out information through their Facebook. They also have okay, so I can't say this enough. The information that has come through the chambers, so thank you to all the chamber directors. You guys have been working so hard, staying in touch and keep knowing what the information is, and then giving avenues for small business people to collect that information, either through social media, through your website, through any of your online archived pieces, through offering these workshops. All of those things, super important, and I am so grateful on behalf of the small business community to what you guys have been doing, because every single one of you have stepped up, and I'm really grateful to all of that. So good job. And small business people, please remember that these chambers are out there, and you going out to get information means that later on you really should support to continue to get that information.
And we just heard from Eric Krantz from Dearborn. We heard from Eric Krantz at Dearborn County, and he does a great job of sharing information with his members down there as well. So thanks for joining us, Eric. The final thing I want to close with as we continue to wrap up, and again, you have one more chance, another chance, a couple minutes to submit questions. But the next round of funding is supposed to be decided on today. And if everything I'm reading from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I think they're going to take a vote at 4 p.m. And I'll speak on behalf of the Greensburg Decatur County Chamber of Commerce. And most chambers, all chambers of commerce are a 501c6 organization. We are not taxpayer supported. Some chambers have a foundation, so they're C3s. So far, C6 organizations such as the chambers, we have not been included in any of those possible fundings from the government. So they have excluded us, which I've made a pretty big stink about it, because those senators, and you know our senator here, Senator Mike Braun, they reach out to us to reach out to our business community so they can call in and talk about the IDL loan and things like that, PPP. So if we're important enough for us to reach out and bridge that gap between the business community, then my opinion is chambers should be important enough to be included in opportunities for funding as well during these critical times. Chambers are membership-based businesses, and we do rely on our events, and we have absolutely been impacted. So if you get a chance to call your senator or drop your senator a note and say, hey, in today's funding, if you consider Chambers of Commerce as a 501c6, that would be really appreciated. That's my soapbox, and I'm going to continue to be on my soapbox. It's a tough situation because we're going to be here. We're going to do everything we can to stay here. But the fact is, we aren't like, and I'm sure Batesville and Ripley County are the same way, we are not a larger chamber with absolutely incredible amounts of money flowing in. There are chambers out there that are very well set for 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. But our chambers, and Deb and Trish, if you want to weigh in, that's fine. Maybe I'm talking silliness, but please, if you get a chance to reach out to Senator Braun, that'd be awesome. So Ginnie?
Just as a point after that, by the way, I did reach out to Senator Braun on Monday.
Thank you.
And told him that I would like to see that in the next round of funding. But that said, keep in mind that if you have not applied for the PPP yet and you found out that it closed, that there wasn't any money left in it, please run out to your bank, start with the bank that you are doing business with today, and apply for that money if you need it. If you need it, go and apply for it. Remember, you can only get it once, and a lot of the banks were allowing you to continue to apply even though the funding wasn't there yet. So you want to get in that queue. Banks have been super good about processing those loans. I'll give my hats off to them on that. And but you'll have to start with the one that you do business with today. And like Jeff said, it's probably going to open back up again. So this is the time.
Well, Trish Miller just said she talked to John Moten, who is Senator Braun's assistant here in our area, and she's saying that chambers did not make the cut again. That being said, folks, as we continue to work through it, whether or not we make the cut or not, if you can encourage business, once you're back set, once you're back ready to go and things are flowing again, please keep chambers in mind for membership and or sponsorship opportunities as well. So we have a lot of avenues out there that we can help you out. Speaking on behalf of us, I'll tell you what, our social media has skyrocketed. It's unbelievable the numbers we're seeing. are seeing great hits on our website. Our partners here in Decatur County, Economic Development, Community Foundation, Tourism, Main Street, Greensburg, we're in constant contact with moving things forward, trying to get our community reignited, restarted. So good things happening. And I'm sure that's happening also in Ripley County and Batesville. I know they're all working very hard together.
So also, Jeff, in the marketing planning piece we talked about for small businesses, please consider the chambers as places to have events or to cooperate with them on the events that they're having to allow your customers to interact with you, especially if you're a business to business business. Those businesses do really well. And if you're business to consumer, that you can cooperate together with the chambers. That's a really good avenue on events.
So while obviously my job is to plug the chamber, I'm telling you there are other organizations out there as well. The United Funds in our county, those folks are working hard. They are providing. They were immediate response. I mean, they didn't hesitate. I know our local United Fund jumped right on after things started happening to provide funding for those businesses, those organizations that provide food, Bread of Life, our human services, and I'm sure that's probably happening in other counties as well. So please keep all those people in mind. There's a lot of opportunity to support, and we move forward with optimism and see what happens with the governor's conference today and whether or not he's going to what he's going to say about May 1, which is kind of a target date, but I'm sure it's going to be a slow open, and we'll just kind of go on from there. Anybody have any final thoughts? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you want, or chime in. Hearing nothing, folks. Wait, hang on. Joanne?
Great information today, Jeff. I think Jenny, you really covered the basis, and we really just appreciate what the chamber's doing here in our community. You've been very actively involved, and United Fund really supports that. We've been able to share a lot of that information as well. So thank you both for a great presentation today.
Oh, good. Thank
We
you.
appreciate your support. Again, I can't say enough for our local organizations here, tourism and Main Street, Greensburg, and economic development. Economic development was very pivotal. The Greensburg area, Decatur County, saved $250,000 as announced yesterday from the governor, and it's an Okra grant, and they are working on a stipulation. So there will be some funding coming out for some businesses, and Brian Robbins will be probably the main contact. He's our economic development director, and we're going to share information from him jointly, and we'll see how that process moves forward. So I appreciate everybody that's helped out. All right, folks, I do. Jenny, you have final thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to you, Jeff, and to all the chamber directors. It's a good opportunity to get together. Hopefully we'll keep working on this. And I know, Jeff, you and I have talked about how we moving forward when we come out of this so we can help small businesses. So stay tuned with the chambers to find out how that's going to happen.
And rest assured that I'll continue talking with the Ripley County Chamber, Deb, and Batesville area chamber, Trish. And you know what? Zoom has changed our world, folks. It has absolutely changed our world. And there is no reason in my mind, I've already talked to some chambers north of Indianapolis about this. We have businesses that would not mind doing business as suppliers or whatever with other businesses. So this might be a new way for us to virtually connect with an after hours event or introducing other people that can help your business grow. Wouldn't it be terrific if we had Eric down in Dearborn County with 5 or 10 businesses that we can introduce to other 5 or 10 businesses in Ripley County and Batesville and Greensburg, and we all start chatting together, and maybe some of that business crosses. Wouldn't that be terrific? This might be a whole new avenue for us, and I'm pretty excited about the opportunity for this. Anyway, I'm off my horse. Guys, thanks a lot for joining us today. Deb at Ripley County, Trish at Batesville, thank you so much for helping us with this and getting us out there. Eric, it's good to see you again, of course, and we will be in touch. You have our numbers, you have our website addresses. We will make this recording available if anybody wants to see it again and download it to watch it over or speed through other things. So with that being said, we'll put that word out there and we'll share it with our chambers and move on from there. Ginny, thank you so much. Love you to death. You're terrific, and I cannot applaud the SBDC for having you in our area, and thank you for that. We'll always fight for you, Ginny. So
Thanks. Thank you.
folks, that's all we have time for. We'll talk to you soon. Be safe.